Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Culture, Leisure Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Murray Turner, and I'll be chairing the meeting today with my Vice Chairman, Barry Dobson, to my left, and to my right is Democratic Services Officer Amy Pride. Can I remind members that the meeting is being recorded and can also be watched as a live stream, either later or remotely at your leisure through the SKDC webcast facility. It would be appreciated if mobile phones could be switched to silent, please. There is no scheduled fire drill today, so if we hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit to the assembly point on the green at the front of the building. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can I request that you indicate by raising your hand. Thank you ever so much. Moving on, agenda item 1, public speakers. We don't have any public speakers as far as I'm aware, but I have had a question via email from a member of the public, which I'm going to read out, and hopefully we can get an answer on it. And it's from a Mr. Alan Clifford. Dear Mr. Murray, I'm not sure if you're the correct person to contact by being directed your way. I swim regularly at the Meres and find at times difficult to book for the middle of the day sessions as they are full. I've asked at reception and been told that they would like to add more lane swims but are unable due to schools having swimming lessons. But when I ask why there can't be lane swims after 3 o'clock when the schools no longer require the pool, I couldn't get a satisfactory reason. It seems a waste when people like myself of a certain age would like to swim at this time. I hope you can help with this matter. Yours sincerely, Alan Clifford. And I've circulated that mail to relevant officers. Is there someone from Leisure SK who might be able to help with an answer? Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. So it's two parts really. One, we've had an increase in swimming at lunchtime, which is great. So we're currently reviewing the numbers to increase the numbers available. So hopefully you'll find that you can get in at lunchtime. The post 3 o'clock is a slightly more challenging situation because the swimming lessons tend to start at kind of 4:45 or 4. But what we have done is we've started adding some senior swims at 3 o'clock that have been quite popular. So within the next few weeks, there'll be additional sessions and there'll be increased numbers in the existing sessions.
Thank you very much for that answer. Is it possible to send me that in the electronic format so I can pass it back to the member of the public? Thank you. Item 2, do we have any apologies for absence, Amy?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor James Dennison and he'll be substituted by Tim Harrison today. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter?
Thank you, Chair. I apologise that I need to leave early, probably about 11:05, due to an obligation at county. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any declarations of interest? Excellent. Moving on to item 4 then, minutes from the previous meeting. Now, I've read through all these, they seem fine with me, but are there any corrections, amendments? None as such? No? Updates from the previous meeting? Oh, can we take a vote to accept the meetings as a true record then, please? Thank you, Emma, and Gareth seconding, and then all in favour of accepting those minutes? Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Apart from Tim, who wasn't here, so he's abstaining. Were there any actions from the last meeting's minutes?
I believe, Chairman, all of the updates from the previous meeting have been completed and they are on page 17 of your agendas.
Thank you very much. Now, the next item, item 6, is announcements or updates from the Leader of the Council, Cabinet members or the Head of Paid Service, and I believe that Deputy Leader, Councillor Stokes, has announcements for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got four, actually. The first one, I think we should congratulate Bourne Town Football Club. They have reached the semi-final, I believe it's the FA Vars, one game away from Wembley and won at Atherstone at the weekend, 2-2. They were 2-2 and won on penalties. It's a fantastic achievement, and I think we, as a overview and council, should congratulate Bourne Town Football Club on their achievement. Secondly and thirdly, I would like to issue a compliment to Leisure SK. I think last weekend there was a Lincolnshire Gala at Grantham Mears, which was incredibly well run. Teams from Grantham Swimming Club and Deeping Swimming Club were there. The whole event was superbly run by interaction with officials of the swimming clubs and the referees, umpires, etc. Good crowds there, and for those who have mentioned it previously, the cafe was doing a roaring trade. Thirdly, a sort of declaration of interest. This weekend is the Grantham Rotary Club Swim Marathon. The Swim Marathon I am actually on the organisation committee, and that's all I am. I'm an operational person. But the chair of the Rotary Club has asked me to thank Leisure SK for the way that they have liaised with them, the pricing structure, that they know that they've got to pay something for the venue, given that we need lifeguards, etc., etc., the rooms and the coordination with the club. So hopefully hundreds and hundreds of people will be there this weekend, and the Rotary Club will probably get £50,000 to donate to communities and charities. And finally, if I may indulge once more in terms of the arts centres and the pantomimes, I think we have been out there recording the figures that have been achieved over the Christmas period, but the Guildhall at Grantham, 11,000 people over 61 performances. Stanford, 1,900 people over 12 performances, which was 93% attendance. And then, not forgetting Bourne Corn Exchange, which was hired out to local group who put on a very successful pantomime that was incredibly well represented. So I'd just like to thank everybody.
Thank you very much for those announcements, Councillor Stokes. Moving on then to item 7, which is a review of South Kesteven's council-led markets, an update. And I believe that's you're going to speak on that as well, Councillor Stokes.
Thank you, Chairman. The report provides an update on the Markets Action Plan, which was presented to this committee in September 2024. The Action Plan was designed to facilitate the delivery of the recommendations from the High Street Experts Review of Bourne, Grantham and Stamford markets. The Action Plan has been updated to include timelines and financial information as requested at the last committee. To aid the implementation of the actions identified in the consultant-led review, the team also bid for funding from UK SPF, and this bid was successful. The Action Plan in Appendix 1 shows which actions are funded by the UK SPF bid and which actions require additional funding. In total, 58,200 of funding were granted, and this money will cover a variety of areas ranging from store covers through to business support for traders. If the full action plan were to be completed, or is to be completed, we would require an additional £30,000 worth of funding. To facilitate this, budget proposals for 25-26 include the formation of a new revenue reserve, which could be used to fund the agreed actions as set out in the action plan. If this fund is agreed that through the budget setting process, the entire action plan will be delivered within the 25-26 financial year. Any questions?
Councillor Martin.
Morning. Just a quick question. Is the stage, which is proposed here, is £4,000, is that for one one stage going to be stored in one location, or is it 3 stages, one for each location? It's not particularly clear.
Thank you. That is one stage that's mobile, so they can move it, so it could go to wherever we needed the event. There we go. I think that's better. Yeah, so one stage.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. Just while we're on talking of stages, obviously, so we've allocated £4,000 for a stage. Obviously, I'm not, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Glastonbury stages, and it's definitely not that. But I guess kind of what are the dimensions of where does 4,000 get you in terms of a stage? You know, we're talking like a 3 metre by 3 metre. You know, if we're going to use this, excuse me, if we're going to use this for events, across the district, are we making sure that is a sufficient size, to ensure performances are actually kind of performed to their full kind of extent, and we're not kind of just buying a 3 by 3 metre, which means that you can only get kind of two dancers on the stage. Just understand kind of where does a 4,000 stage kind of get us in terms of size. Thank you.
Councillor Stokes.
I don't know whether you saw the stage we had at Christmas. It's a similar type of stage to that. It certainly would contain a band and stage, musical instruments, etc. It probably won't sort of put on the entire Grantham School of Dancing, but obviously there would be room for manoeuvre on that stage, and we can always find and get additions to that if we need to.
Councillor Bailey and then Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Just on that same section, I think we've allocated £10,000 for stall covers. I assume that's primarily for Grantham. I want to just make that assumption there. But also, kind of, what does this look like in terms of the end result? How many stalls, will our max capacity be at Grantham once we've kind of purchased these new kind of covers? What are we looking to in terms of what's the maximum kind of stall capacity at Grantham? Thank you.
Who can answer that for us, please?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know a specific number, but the thing about Grantham is it can kind of grow bigger and smaller. So at the minute where we are, it's a kind of set geographical location, but we've got the marketplace. So really at Grantham, we could grow it quite significantly depending on how much you wanted to inconvenience the road users and close roads and things like that. So I can look at getting you a number, but I think it's fair to say that it's actually quite flexible in what we can grow. And the same at the other locations. Stamford's pretty full, as we know at the minute. We've got a bit of a waiting list, but Bourne is also quite a considerable amount of scope for growth.
Thanks. Yeah, some of this stuff in here just seems a little familiar, and I wouldn't necessarily put some of it with the markets as such. I mean, for example, the stage presumably is probably more likely to be used when the market's not on. It's more a thing to attract people into the town centre and the marketplace rather than the market, and there might just be a little bit of, it's not necessarily part of the market, if that makes sense. I think everything that goes on in Grantham Town Centre, for some reason, we sort of psychologically attach to the market, which is a little bit confusing. But I'm told repeatedly by people that a few years ago there was some little lorry that was bought by the council that used to travel around the district promoting the council's wares, and then everyone decided that this was quite expensive and we're just going to pretend this never happened, and we've all been told to forget this ever existed. What lessons were learned from that in terms of then constructing this? Because there does seem to be a little bit of a similarity in terms of having sort of something that goes around providing a platform literally for people to do things on, promoting the council, travelling around the district. It is quite similar to that, and obviously we did it before a few years ago. I know nothing of the details, but everyone's nodding that was around. Have we learned any lessons from that, just so that we don't go and make the same mistakes all over again?
We'll allow Councillor Stokes to answer that because he's got a good memory of these things, and then we'll go to Councillor Harrison's question.
Wow. I'll refrain from going too far on this, but in all fairness, the ultimate is fit for purpose. It was bought at the time it was bought without proper consideration of travelling around the district, if I'm honest. It was not fit for purpose in any way, shape or form. It was not drivable. The twice it was taken out, there were accidents. It's a tricky one, but it was a lot of money, 5 figures, I understand, and it was used probably 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, dramatic lessons to be learned. And whilst located in one place when it was on St Peter's Hill, it looked great, but once it was come to be towed and travelled around, it was just not fit for purpose in any way, shape or form. So the stage that we've got, I can assure you, will be erected and be able to be transported around. But it was a serious lesson, I guess, for the council.
It was under a previous administration.
That was, yeah, learned under an administration that didn't have its eye on that particular ball.
Councillor Dobson's got a further update.
As you probably know, this was the leader of the council at the time. It was his idea, Matthew Lee, who is no longer with us. Well, he may be still living somewhere up and down on the trains. But yeah, it was a mad moment, I think, and we all realised at the time that it was money unwisely spent and that it wouldn't work. And what we're doing here is completely different. So, but I just thought you might want to know that. I'm sure you knew it anyway, Gareth.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a bit of clarification for the questions that have been asked already, as far as I understand them. We've got circa 40 stalls that we aren't using at the moment in Grantham Market, and a lot of this is to provide the covers for those stalls for expansion. As regards the making the same mistake with this stage, it's nothing like the same mistake. We have got vehicles that can transport this one. We didn't have a vehicle that could take the trailer at all. That's why it overtook the vehicle that was towing it. And as regards it being used, this stage is mainly for the marketplace. It is a smaller stage. It's for events that will be used to enhance the market, as far as I understand it. When we have the bigger events, we will hire a stage in as normal, but this is to allow events to be put on to enhance markets and that are going on all over the district. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed in the report it talks about, sorry, I'm losing my voice, it talks about introducing a market/high street loyalty card. Can I just understand kind of where this kind of fits and overlaps with kind of what was discussed at, you know, the finance and economic kind of future high street kind of ideas they're doing as well? Because obviously a loyalty card was discussed then, and I think it was decided the council doesn't do one. So I'm just kind of trying to understand, are we talking about the same thing here, or is these kind of 2 different loyalty card schemes that we're looking at? Thank you.
Yeah, they're the same thing. So, as part of the High Street Experts review that was undertaken, one of the things that was recommended was around the loyalty card. So we've included it in the action plan in that kind of additional funding that we could choose to fund or not, and it would be, the cost in there is £3,000 per market or per town. So it's one of those recommendations that have come out of the bigger consultant review, kind of like the stage issue as well, in that markets aren't necessarily now just where people want to go and buy the groceries for the week. They're where people want to go for entertainment and to take their children, or, you know, for a day out. So the stage that we've purchased is a smaller one that the markets team can put up and assemble and disassemble safely. So they all buy into this idea that we're trying to make the markets more of an event that families want to come into to draw the crowds, and that card would feed into that kind of around like love your local town and shop local and things like that. So it's been included as a potential extra from that funding if it's approved through the budget setting process. But the idea is to kind of give our markets more of an events edge. So whereas previously they were probably separate, like say you've got events on one hand and markets on another, what we're looking at is bringing them to kind of together on the back of that consultant-led review, which is showing that markets have changed and now people want more of an event to go out for as opposed to just buy, you know, bread, milk, eggs, cheese.
I think Councillor Stokes wants to speak, but can I ask a couple of supplementary questions about the loyalty scheme? Obviously, the markets are different sizes, but there's one amount allowed for each market. It's about £3,000 for each loyalty scheme. Why does it cost the same to deliver it across all three markets? And the other point was, how do we get the retailers to the money back to them for the discount that's offered by the scheme, and who's administering it?
Thank you. In all honesty, with the loyalty scheme, it kind of sits more in that economic development, so it would be Mel Brown and Nick Hibbard. I don't know much about it. They've just provided the cost for the action plan, because we are working quite closely with them to deliver it. So some of this falls into our operational vein and some of it falls into that economic development. But I'll take that away as an action and get you some answers on them. They've worked out all the pricing. I've just stolen their numbers.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes?
Yeah. Currently, this particular item, you'll see is agreed and not funded at this point in time. And I think subject to discussions, etc., that we take forward, this is not absolutely crucial to the market. And maybe it's one to discuss whether or not we want to take that forward.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Chair. Just another point of information. I did sit in with Mel in some of the meetings with the traders, and they didn't want us to provide the card, the loyalty card. They want to do it themselves, and it was looking at us helping them provide their loyalty schemes. So I think it's a way of us giving them the funding that helps them provide their loyalty schemes that works for their shop. So we're handing it all over to them, basically, but giving them a helping hand.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final, I guess, parting kind of thought from me. I guess when I look at the action plan, I guess I was looking at kind of, why are we doing this? And yeah, obviously I'm not asking that in a real sense, but I think for me, kind of an action plan, you kind of need to look at the starting point. What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to measure that? What does success look like when you're kind of designing kind of an action plan? And I think that, I guess, looking at this at a wider lens, kind of, will we know that any of this, has succeeded or not? What are we measuring kind of any outcome on? Now, obviously, I looked at the KPIs, and I know Councillor Knowles is in the chamber, and I don't know if it's worth exploring, is there some more KPIs that we can tie into the market? I think the only one that we have at the moment is around, year-on-year growth of regular stall holders in Bourne and Grantham, and I'm just wondering, kind of, we're committing a fair amount of money, of council money, onto this action plan, and obviously I do endorse it, but I just want to kind of make sure that we are kind of really understanding, kind of, have we achieved something, when we look back at this in years to come. I think it's worth noting at this point, obviously I have been working with, Richard Wiles and Kay to get some, real-time data as to kind of how our markets are performing, and I might talk about this later on the work plan. But just to put this into context, I think that, the outturn of the markets last year, our total deficit was 48,500. Obviously, the forecast for this year is a total deficit of 106,000. So obviously over the last 12 months, pretty much, our deficit of running our markets has doubled, and I think it's worth kind of keeping that in mind as we continue to invest in the markets, that we're not kind of, chasing something that's not achievable. I'm not saying that we want to break even on our markets, absolutely not. There's a lot that markets bring. It brings in people, footfall, and obviously, for our independent businesses as well. But I think that, we just probably need to have a look at that financial kind of position of our markets to make sure that we are kind of not kind of increasing that too much in terms of the cost to kind of keep our markets kind of going. So that's just my kind of thoughts around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I'm going to allow Councillor Knowles to answer that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the KPIs, they are yours. They belong to the committee. They were compiled originally and set, obviously, by the staff, by Charles largely and Debbie. But they are yours, and if you feel that there are other things that you want to look at, then within reason clearly, then we can arrange for information to be produced for that, and they can be added to the KPIs. The KPIs were there to be reviewed by the committee should they find that they were either surplus to requirements or inadequate, and so far so that further information may be available should you wish, but it's from the committee to decide what they want.
Debbie Roberts.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on Councillor Knowles. Obviously, we've not still had quite the first full year of the KPIs. What we will be doing though is in the probably in the autumn time, we will send a report when we do the Q2. So the next second year of the corporate plan, we will ask the members to consider if they want any changes to the KPIs. So I think we need to have the full first year of those KPIs. We need to get to the end of this financial year, and then the next time we come and present the data to you, we'll give the members of the committee an opportunity to amend those KPIs at that point. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that explanation. I think there is a danger that we do realise that the markets aren't, it's not financial, you put this in, you get that out. But there is a danger of creep through different schemes to just spend more money on it, which may or may not be desirable, but will certainly be voted on at this committee and in the Finance Committee, and then referred to Cabinet, and then they can make a final decision. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, there's not a vote in action on this item on the agenda. It's just noting it, so we won't be seeking a vote. Are there any further questions on the markets? Excellent. Thank you very much then. Going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, Grantham Town Football Club, and I believe that Paul would like to speak on that as well.
I will speak. Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to present this report today, which provides the committee with an update on the ongoing lease negotiations between the Council and Grantham Town Football Club. As members will be aware, discussions between the Council and the club have been protracted and ongoing since the expiry of the previous lease on the 31st of December 2021. In reality, that lease has been ongoing for, well, that was a lease, but various negotiations have been ongoing for a significant amount of time. In truth, discussions have been going on for a long, long while. And on this, we do have to compliment Councillor Baxter, who has, through strong leadership, cajoled me to bring this report before you today, and the officers working with us. He has been conscious that we need to get this report before the committee. Under the terms of the previous lease, the club pay a peppercorn rent to the council, and they are required to pay pitch hire fees and a contribution to utilities to Leisure SK, who manage the stadium on the council's behalf. As part of the ongoing negotiations, senior officers and members have been working hard to ensure that any potential new lease is fit for purpose and reflects the requirements of the stakeholders. A formal valuation of the stadium has been undertaken to assess an appropriate market lease payment to the council. This is unaffordable for the club, and there is a proposal put forward for introducing a staged payment approach, which details how the club can grow its income to a sufficient level to cover the lease payments. Exempt Appendix 6 provides details on the current state of negotiations, including requests made by the club. In noting the contents of the report and the current position of negotiations, it is recommended that members of the Culture and Leisure Overview and Scrutiny Committee provide a recommendation to Cabinet on the basis of a new lease to the club incorporating the financial implications. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Stokes. Now, it's quite detailed, and a lot of it's in pink paper, so I think we're going to need to go into private session to discuss it. So can we have a vote to go into, that's proposed by Councillor Knight, seconded by Councillor Harrison. All those in favour of going into private session? Yeah. So at this point, under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public may be excluded from the meeting during any listed items of business on the grounds that, were they to be present, exempt information could be disclosed to them as defined in the relevant sections of Schedule 12A of the Act. So, is there anyone who needs to leave? So we're just turning off the computer so that we're not in the room, everyone. There was a very lengthy discussion, and I'm going to ask Karen to sum up what we're recommending to Cabinet, and then we're going to take a vote on it.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can get this right for the second time. So I think we recommend to Cabinet that there is support from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for a lease arrangement to be entered into with Grantham Town Football Club. However, that will be predicated on understanding their future ambitions in terms of community activity and the resulting benefits to the council and the wider town.
That's proposed by Councillor Harrison. Can we have a second? Councillor Knight. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, let's move on to item 9 on the agenda, the financial and operational performance of Leisure SK. And Debbie, I believe that you're presenting this for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to make it clear that we've got Paul Sutton here, who's a fellow director of Leisure SK, Matt Chamberlain on behalf of Leisure SK, obviously Councillor Knowles is a fellow director of Leisure SK as well. So the report before you today just is an update on the finance and operational performance of the company. Obviously, as the committee know, we're in the last few months now of the existing contract, and we're due to enter into a new 10-year contract under the agency principles from the 1st of April 2025. So just a broad update in terms of where the company are in terms of overall fitness memberships. They've increased from December 23 to December 24. Also is increased the membership. Stamford had the largest increase in membership, followed by Bourne and then Grantham. Direct debit income has increased in fitness memberships 11.7%, and that's down to a mix of increased membership numbers and the increase in membership prices as well in January of 2024. Swim School continues to perform quite well. We've had an increase of 4.2%. That growth is 6% price due to 6% increase in price. The Mears has been holding some really good events, and I think we've mentioned Councillor Stokes kindly thanked the Leisure SK earlier. Obviously, the number of events that we're now putting on has increased hugely, as well as then the income from bar and cafe, which is having a positive effect on our cash flow as a company. Published yesterday, I think, was the Cabinet report for next week, where the company has asked the Council for a loan for Grantham Mears refurbishment of its gym. So obviously as a company we're hoping that we can proceed with that to try and bring back a bit of the market share in Grantham that we are really keen to look at. The financial position of the company, we discuss it at every board meeting, and there is an exempt appendices of where we are So the current cash flow, you'll be pleased to see, has increased from our last board meeting, and we are showing a small deficit position before the end of this financial year in the papers that have been provided. We're actually hopeful that we can meet those that deficit ourselves just through some finance options that we're looking into. We've also got the request for the 150,000 to be included in the budget setting process, which we're hoping will be paid over to Leisure SK on the 1st of April, and that was that cash flow to get us through the new agency model principles. But we are obviously happy to take any questions that the committee have. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Debbie. I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Knight, but I had a question. If, as you go into a new model of operation, is it the right time to take on a large loan to invest in the gymnasium area, or would it be better to let the new model settle in for a while to see how financially things were going?
Through Chair, so even though it's a different model of operation, the budget setting and the budgets are the same, the costs and the income are the same. The only change is really around the irrecoverable VAT, which we know is going to reduce. So it actually makes the company's position better. So it's a really opportune time to kind of take on that debt and do this work.
Thank you. I guess what I'm asking is, due to the improved performance of the company, not just now, but ongoingly under the new model, what period of time would it take you to gain the income that you needed to do that investment if there wasn't a loan?
Sorry, through you, Chair. I think we're kind of verging on exempt discussion and exempt. So.
I think
Karen's going to come.
The business plan is in the exempt appendices for the cabinet report about consideration of the money for the loan.
If I can just come in, thank you, Chairman. I think we're straying into territory of debating a paper that sits with a cabinet responsibility. So I think we need to be really careful about that. So respectful of the questions, I do appreciate what you're saying, Chairman, but I think we do need to be careful. We are entering into a debate that we shouldn't be having at this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll refer that question to the cabinet at some future point. Councillor Knight first, and then Councillor Bailey.
Two things. I mean, one of them just on that. You know, I think I completely appreciate that the business plan's gone to the cabinet and it's exempt, so I won't say anything on that. I hope that the cabinet will be scrutinising some of the questions about the different options, because certainly when we had the tour of the leisure centres just before Christmas, it is extremely complicated how much the market changes in terms of leisure demand and supply and things. So, you know, the move away from cardio and in favour of studios, and then away from studios back in favour of freeway. I mean, it gets extremely complicated. So I hope that the cabinet will be scrutinising that a little bit. And look at the different options. But the other point, much more positively, it was this meeting last year, the first meeting of last year, where you know, this committee really went to town on Leisure SK, and I've got to say I'm extremely impressed by how, in the space of 12 months, the board now has turned it around. Even if there's financial things that are not ideal that we can look at and say, oh, maybe, you know, that could be a little bit better, or that could be a little bit clearer. It's difficult to understate just how much more confidence I, as a member of this committee, have in the stuff that is being presented to us. Everything's much clearer. I get the impression that if I did have a technical question, that it would be answered, if not straight away, very, very quickly. And this time last year, that was absolutely not the case. So all credit to Debbie and the rest of the board for turning this around, because I do think that the difference from 12 months ago to now is considerable. So I'd just like to put my thanks on record for that.
Thank you,
She's
Councillor.
behind me, I apologise, but...
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess just going back to the gym, and obviously it's mentioned in the report 1.10, I think it talks about this, what's coming to Cabinet. I think I'm just a bit confused as to why, as a Culture and Leisure Overview and Scrutiny Committee, that's responsible for our leisure and holding Leisure SK, I guess, to account and making sure everything goes to plan is, looking at the Cabinet report, it's a £240,000 investment / loan that's in there. I'm just kind of confused as to why we haven't had the opportunity to make a recommendation as a Culture and Leisure into to be able to provide our kind of feedback to the Cabinet, because fundamentally, whether Cabinet agree it or not, it will have an impact on the performance of Leisure SK. So I think that we should have probably had a report come to this committee just to debate it and provide our recommendation to the Cabinet. So I just want to understand kind of why that didn't happen. I'm sure there is a valid reason, just from my understanding. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I think it's down to timing, Councillor Bailey. There's an opportunity. We've had an approach from Leisure SK. They need to be mindful of retaining their market share as well as attracting new customers. With the timing that came in, there's an opportunity for that to go into the Council's main budget setting programme, which is why it's going to Cabinet with a recommendation on through the normal budget setting process, so it will sit as a line in the capital budget. So members of this committee obviously have a course of action, so you can contact Cabinet, make representations to Cabinet on that paper, which has been circulated, and also as part of the Council's main budget setting process as well. So although it's not come here, there are 2 more bites of the cherry where you can input and have a say on that matter. Thank you.
Would you like to come back on that, Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I think because we've got a meeting today, and obviously Cabinet is next Tuesday, for me it would have been logical to have had, a quick, like I say quick, a report where we could kind of give Cabinet our recommendation in a more formal way, rather than, you're right, we can appear at the Cabinet, absolutely, but, I just look at it and kind of, we are the ones that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I just think it's, a little bit illogical to expect Cabinet to make a decision of £240,000, pound loan without kind of our say so. Obviously, the £240 is in the report that's now public, so I don't think I'm saying anything that's not in the public domain now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I do appreciate your comments, but I've got nothing further to say from what I've already commented. Thank you.
Debbie.
Just to give Councillor Bailey a bit more information, obviously it was just a 1-year business plan that we presented in November to the committee. Obviously we will be working on a longer term business plan, which will probably have more around potential opportunities for investment that the companies want to make. So I think as part of our November meeting where we talk about our business plan, obviously this was just to get us through this first year, but in November it will be a much broader plan around things that the company would like to seek investment in, around those things, gym improvements, etc., or refurbishments.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, so that was just for notification purposes, that item on the agenda. So I think we're going to move on to the work programme. Any questions on the work?
Yeah, I mean, it's very light, isn't it? It's astonishing and a real novelty for this committee to have a relatively light one. I'm just thinking, with the May one, given that is at the end of the season, football season, is there an argument for asking Grantham Football Club to see if they could come in for that one, and so we can have an initial discussion, particularly given that we've got the sports and physical activity update, and every single time that happens, Beth and Karen sit there and basically we nod it through in about 2 minutes. So it could be very light, and it might be worthwhile tying that in with the football club, given that what Councillor Blake has said in terms of let's get them in sooner rather than later, perhaps.
I think that's a very good idea, but especially if we could have made our visit to the ground by then as well. Karen?
Thank you, Chairman. There is another report actually to add to the forward plan. It's not made its way on here yet, but Michael will be bringing an update on the implementation of the agency model and how that's gone, because obviously we'll be a month or so into that by that time, if members are supportive of that. So that's another one. I think with the suggestion of bringing the football club back, I think it goes back to that conversation that Councillor Stokes and I need to have about are they up for change and are they up for coming to present to the committee. I also don't think it gives them a lot of time to put some plans and thoughts in action, but it's something that we could suggest to them.
James?
Just to inform members that we're getting to that stage of the year where our draft dates are coming forward, and we'll have a better idea of when we're likely to meet next year. Obviously, the AGM in May will decide that. But we will start to put on the forward plan for committees items that we tend to see on the agenda, or 6 monthly or yearly updates that we have every year. So we'll work with Amy and the other clerks for other committees to start putting those on the agenda for next year. We won't be able to give you a fixed date until May, but if it's regular business for the July meeting, we'll indicate that's when it's likely to come, just so that you don't have an empty work programme when you get to May.
Thank you for that. Councillor Knight.
Yeah, I think the next meeting after this is after the May one is July anyway, and there's not, as we said earlier at the football club, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff happens between May and July. I just think if it is possible, I know that being volunteers it is difficult, but I just think it would be possible, because I actually think that a lot of the conversations we've had today, I think it would actually have been quite useful in many ways if the football club had heard some of that, because I think that that it would give them a much clearer idea as to what we're all thinking. The other thing, I'm really glad to see the sports club in the district stuff is planned for May. I look forward to that. I think that it's some of this stuff's really good. But I noticed that once again, Councillor Stokes is going to mention this in a second. We've managed to kick arts and culture totally off the agenda and turn it into a sports committee again. So it would be quite good, maybe, to have we must be due an arts and culture update by then, surely.
Yeah, I certainly support that, and I think last time we had a bit of a conversation about having a deeper dive into some of the performance information. I know we did bring a report, I'm not sure if it was September time, but anyway, on the back of what Councillor Stokes said, we've had some fantastic successes with the Panto, the new programme that we've got, so I'm more than happy to bring something back to the May meeting, so I'm committing my officers to do that.
Good, well suggested, Councillor Knight. Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to see on the work plan a market fee review, and just obviously we just had the fee review of the budget, and obviously we did have discussions certainly as a group. I had some ideas around this, and obviously the timing wasn't quite right to do this, and obviously following the feedback of I think the leader in terms of we probably have 12 months now to kind of have a look at our market fees to see if they are right. I certainly saw, we're struggling in Bourne. Do they need a reduction in fees for Bourne to bring some of that market back? That was something that I spotted and thought, would that be a good way to bring more kind of, obviously that market, bring it back to life in Bourne. But then in Grantham, I was looking at the pitch fees, and I was doing some research and comparing to our fees compared to Sleaford on a Saturday, and there were some kind of question marks in terms of, is our market position right across all of our markets that we do? So I would like, if it is possible, from the officers to give us a market fee review where we're going to evaluate kind of what are our competitors doing in kind of surrounding markets, just to make sure that we could then perhaps have a recommendation for when our fees come back around in 12 months' time to actually then actually understand, are our fees kind of in line with what other kind of councils are doing to make sure we're competitive in the market? So hopefully that is kind of acceptable, and people can see kind of why we just need to level set, I think, and make sure our fees are in the right market. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion. I'm not sure that it wouldn't be better sat in the finance meeting, as it's purely a finance thing. But Karen, did you have something to say on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So The inclusion of the arts and culture one was a quite straightforward request, and I think we can easily accommodate that one. I'll just refer members to the change to the constitution that was agreed at council last week. So I think I understand where you're getting to, Councillor Bailey, but I think if we could have a written proposal that really outlines what it is you're trying to achieve and what information that you're wanting, I think that would be much easier for then members, for officers to put that together. So I think, as we mentioned previously, in terms of markets, there's an operational bit that Kay does and reports to this committee, but there's also like a more strategic view that Nick Hibbard from an economic development heads up. So for me, I think it's a bit of a mismatch of both of those officers. So just to make sure we get it completely right, in line with the new procedure in the Constitution, if we could have a written proposal and some outlines of what you want to see in that report, then I'm sure we can accommodate it.
Councillor Knight.
Yeah, just on that, so during the build-up to the fees proposal that came to the full council last week, feels like a long time ago now, but before that there were various different fees that I know several other councillors were looking at and asking questions about, and a lot of these are complicated. A lot of them are fixed anyway. You can't actually change them. I do think there are potentially questions to be asked about a couple of the market fees. Bourne in particular, I think it's basically dying as a market. Something quite drastic, I think, has got to be done there. We don't have, to my knowledge, Councillor Harrison in Bourne, someone that is very much sort of very focused on that market. So, but what I planned on doing was actually writing to Councillor Lay, asking to ask FIOSC formally for a full 12-month review of pretty much all of our fees, because I think that there's a lot of clarity that's needed on some of those, and yeah, I think that we probably need to do that through FIOSC in terms of fees, but I certainly think in terms of a Bourne action plan in particular related to market fees, I think that might be an option, but I think that's possibly... Oh, God, no. Sorry. No, a joint scrutiny will not be proposed by me anyway, but I think that the fees element has to go through FIOSC. I think that an action plan specifically for Bourne, like to a certain extent we sort of discussed with Grantham No End, is probably the way to do it, if that makes sense.
Councillor Stokes.
Yeah, just on Bourne, just for clarity and without too much detail at the present time, you may have noticed that the Bourne Town Hall have received their grant for a lottery fund grant, which that will have a significant impact on the current location of our market. And so there will be the opportunity for pilot alterations. So I don't want to get too embedded with an action plan at this stage, because in 2 months' time we're going to have to review how we're going to run the market while those works are in motion for the next 6 to 9 months, potentially. So we'll see how that one works out. We have had a visit to Bourne market with members of Bourne Town Council and picked up several different opinions, and also come up with 2 or 3 potential locations. It may be an opportune time to try those 3 locations while the works are going on to Bourne Town Hall. In fact, there's no choice. There is, but it would really condense the market, and it would also make the market difficult to operate in a safe manner. So in some ways it's come at a really good time, because it gives us the opportunity to try 1 or 2 things out that maybe we wouldn't have tried out before, I guess, because every time you come up with a suggestion, there's always a reason not to do it. But now we've got to try 1 or 2 things. And as I say, we had a very good walk around with some of the members from Bourne Town Council, and we've got some thoughts to try.
Thank you. Any further comments on the potential future work programme? Great stuff. I see there's an item 11 on here, any other business. I don't think we need to pick that up at this time. We seem to have gone on to a lot of any other business during the course of the meeting. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for bearing with us, and particularly sorry for those of you that were led out the room for 45 to 50 minutes while we had a heated debate on Grantham Town Football Club. Yeah, short discussion. Thank you, Barry. Good correction. Thanks very much for coming this morning.